Number 10. Deadly Genesis. We can talk about different X-Men and mutant teams here, but I'd also like to touch on some of the rosters as well that you may have forgotten about. This one might be due to selective memory loss, or it could just be because you haven't read the story yet. We are talking here about the X-Men Deadly Genesis limited series, which revealed the next team sent into Krakoa after the X-Men team we know went missing. This team wasn't necessarily a bad one at all. In fact, all of these mutants are kinda super powerful, but they were all basically introduced in this short series, which didn't really help to make us care as much about them as we could have. All in all, this story just had a very early 2000s feel to it. Not that that's a bad thing. The Deadly Genesis X-Men team were a group of kids that Moira McTaggart was trying to help out. She didn't even really see them as students, and then Charles recruited them and turned them into X-Men. The team consisted of Sway, Petra, Vulcan, and Darwin, who have all recently reappeared in the Dawn of X line, in case you were wondering where they made their first appearance. Number 9. Xavier's Security Enforcers. One that we might forget about every now and then is the mutant team that Bishop originally belonged to from the alternate dystopian future that he hails from. I believe this Earth is 1191, but I could be mistaken on that. Didn't even write down my Earth number. Bothers me. This mutant team is known as the XSE, which stands for Xavier's Security Enforcers. If you know Bishop well and you're a big fan, you likely know this team well, but for those who are new to the character, you might not know about this group of enforcers. The point of the team that Bishop was part of was to preserve the long-dead Professor Charles Xavier's dream, where mutants and humans could exist in harmony, living peacefully together. Bishop has even been known to wield specific future equipment, which he got from XSE, although we haven't seen them in a while. All members of the team wear their mutant tattoo brands like a badge of honor, and the members have included Randall, Malcolm, and Bishop's sister Shard, among others over the years. Before we hop into our number 8 spot, I just want to thank all of you for being here and give you a quick reminder to click that like if you are enjoying this video. It really does help us out. Number 8. Nasty Boys. You might remember the original villainous Marauders team, but do you remember Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys? Don't worry if you have, because I will never let you forget. Well, both the Marauders and Nasty Boys teams are villainous teams. I couldn't have an obscure mutant team list and not seize the opportunity to remind you all of the Nasty Boys, so here we are. I also just love this name for the team. I personally always read Mr. Sinister with like the most outlandish, flamboyant, yet manipulative pseudo-English accent, so for me it's very fitting that he decided to name his team this. Nasty Boys, so perfect. It fits perfectly with the voice that I have for him in my mind. The Nasty Boys were the team that came after the Marauders. Instead of Gambit being involved in the team, Multiple Man was the generally heroic mutant who got involved. Originally, the team saw Ruckus as leader, with Slab, Gorgeous George, Ramrod, and Hairbag making up the roster. Gorgeous George even resurfaced in Dawn of X more recently. Yay! I might be the only one, but I'm still kinda hoping that the Nasty Boys as well will make a return. Bring them back. Bring them back. Number 7. Outback. When it comes to X-Men rosters as teams, one of the best but shortest running roster is the Outback team. This era for the X-Men team lasted less than 25 issues, but was still so good that people still talk about it today. Now, if you missed this one and you've never heard of it, it's one that you actually probably should read. Not one of my silly points, more one of my serious and beloved forgotten teams on this list. The team started off in issue 229 of Uncanny X-Men, with Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Dazzler, Longshot, Havoc, and Psylocke on it. We'd also see Jubilee introduced during this roster's time together. The Outback team is noted as being one of the best rosters for the X-Men when it comes to having a group who truly feel like outsiders. Also, you get to enjoy the Inferno story in this run, which is bizarre and magical, so you're welcome for that. Number 6. X-Corp. No, I'm not talking about the X Corporation, which has yet to come out, but is still coming our way. Thank goodness. I thought that book was going to be firmly cancelled, but fortunately it has been revived. I'm so ready for X Corporation, let's go. When we talk about X-Corp, we are talking about Banshee's team. He formed this team after Generation X disbanded, and most of the team were composed of that era of mutants. This team was made up of former villains turned heroes and was created to act as a police force basically for the mutant community. Joining Banshee were the Blob, Avalanche, Fever Pitch, Jubilee, Husk, and M, aka Monet. The X-Men team actually did not approve of this team's creation and actually attempted to get Banshee to disband it. In the end, Mystique infiltrated the team and liberated its members, especially the villains, who were being manipulated into behaving heroically by Mastermind under Banshee's orders. Number 5. Extreme X-Men. This X-Men roster marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran till 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as the leader, woohoo, which you know I'm all about. The original Extreme X-Men roster also featured Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird on the team. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added to the mix throughout. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats. As you do when you're on an X team. Number 4. Generation Hope. This one is from the 2010 series Generation Hope and was under Cyclops' banner ultimately following the events of Regenesis. Though the team itself was led by mutant messiah Hope Summers, and its roster consisted of No Girl, Pixie, Primal, Sebastian Shaw, Transonic, Velocidad, and Zero at that time. Though originally Hope's team started pre-Regenesis as just being 5 mutants including Hope herself, with Velocidad, Oya, Primal, and Transonic on the team. The team was a search and rescue group who were brought together as they were acknowledged as being 4 of the 5 lights on Cerebra. Hope basically triggered the rebirth of the mutant gene, activating these mutants. The 5th light was what they sought and kind of why they came together, heading to Tokyo, Japan. Zero was the mutant they sought, who would eventually join the team, although originally would be antagonist. Number 3. Martha Wayne. In Flashpoint, we get to visit an alternate timeline where Bruce was the one who died, not his parents. They are forced to live with the loss of their son, which inspired Thomas Wayne to take up the mantle as Batman, but drives his wife Martha insane. She ends up becoming the Joker after Thomas Wayne's Batman goes to take care of the criminal responsible for murdering his son. He tells Martha that he too misses Bruce, and he also misses her smile. When he returns after pummeling the criminal Joe Chill to death with his bare hands, he finds out that Martha has given herself a Glasgow smile. Yee. Number 2. The Batman Who Laughs. Batman Who Laughs is of course more considered an alternate version of Bruce Wayne than of the Joker, but in truth, he's kind of an amalgam of both. Breathing in the Joker's venom that exudes from his corpse after Batman kills him is what causes Bruce to become the Batman Who Laughs. In a sense, Joker, although dead, lives on within him, twisting his mind into something closer to the Joker's than to Bruce's. Although this character just goes to show how close these two characters really could be when it comes to their potential for evil. So wait, would that make Batman kind of an alternate version of Joker himself, and vice versa? Does that mean that Joker is an alternate version of Batman? Batman's an alternate version of Joker? Huh. Number 1. Earth -22 Joker. Why is it that all the darkest iterations of Joker have to die? Well, because, you know, something is about to go horribly wrong when you allow the Joker to die. One of the darkest versions of the Joker to date appeared in the origin story for the Batman Who Laughs. We find out the Batman Who Laughs became who he was because of this Joker, the Joker of Earth -22. Knowing he was going to die soon, finally being poisoned to death by the toxin which had made him who he was, he planned to go out with a bang. This meant taking down all of Batman's former foes, proving that he himself was the ultimate foe, and torturing Batman by orphaning a bunch of children in front of him before exposing the kids to the Joker venom, driving them insane. In doing so, this Joker brought about the most evil creation. Batman snapped and killed the Joker, releasing the very venom that would transform him into the terrifying Batman Who Laughs. And yet Joker got the last laugh there, I think.
Number 10. Death of the Family. Written by Scott Snyder, released in 2013, we see the Joker make his return to Gotham City after having his face sliced off. Yeah, the doll maker gave him a facelift of a lifetime, literally, while he was in Arkham Asylum, but it was all part of a plan. Insert link, 25 seconds to 29, all part of the plan. So he busted out, steals his face back from the police, after of course killing several of them, threatens to murder the mayor, kills John Claridge, kidnaps Alfred, all while wearing the horrible reattached baloney Joker face, and then he ends up kidnapping all of the Bat family members. Ooh, so he makes Batman sit at this table with all of them, as it's revealed what's truly for dinner. They open it up and it's their own faces. Yeah, everybody had bags over their heads, and then underneath they were wrapped in bloody bandages, and then their faces were right there. It's a really horrible scene, but fear not, as this was only another cruel joke. Therapy not included. Wow. And before we continue on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a super thumbs up, that would be great because it goes a long way for us over here. You're the best, thank you so much. If enough of you like this, they'll let me go home for the holidays. Okay, back to some Joker craziness. Number 9, Batman Endgame. Written by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo in 2014, Batman Endgame is not a time heist. No. It is a 6-issue miniseries where the Joker releases an airborne virus so that every citizen in Gotham turns into these mini Joker maniacs, running around, flipping cars, lighting shit on fire. But no tiki torches though, no tiki torches. I mean, they're not that bad, right? Yeah, you white people. Classic evil riot stuff, you know? Now that already sounds bad enough to make the list, but it gets worse. So the Joker also uses this virus to make the Justice League members try and kill Batman. Yeah, making your friends turn against you. That's the worst. So Batman had to use everything he has to fight off his powerful co-workers. And what I love about the Joker / what terrifies me the most about the Joker is how he uses Batman's true identity against him. It's amazing that no matter how many times he does something like this, the stakes are always so high, and it makes you not want to stop reading. And it's resolved with both Batman and Joker having their memories wiped, but those images of Gotham citizens with those horrid smiles drawn across their face, that lives in your head rent-free. Number 8, Joker kills Randall. Okay, I gotta include this one. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix scooped an Oscar for his performance in the 2019 Joker movie, written and directed by comedic all-star Todd Phillips. So we have to talk about some of the crazy key scenes, specifically the way he kills Randall. Spoilers. So we have Arthur Fleck in his apartment. He's getting warm, he's getting his face ready before his big TV gig on the Franklin Murray Show later that night. And then he's joined by his former colleagues, Randall and Gary. So they question his face paint, obviously, by asking if he got a new job or maybe he's planning to go to the rally. And Arthur says, no, his mom died, so he's celebrating. I mean, that's one way of mourning, okay. So Randall asks a few questions about these recent crimes, so Arthur keeps the conversation going a little bit, stalling as he pulls out a knife. And then out of nowhere, he stabs and kills Randall. And the fact that Gary was there like the whole time made us believe nothing bad is gonna happen because Arthur likes Gary. Who doesn't like Gary? He's terrified of what he just saw. He asks Arthur immediately why he just did that. Do you watch the Murray Franklin Show? He responds, yeah, I'm gonna be on it tonight. This scene is just so chilling because he assures Gary so well that he can go free. He even pretends to like lunge at him as he walks by as like a joke. That's how comfortable he is around him. Dude's nuts. Number 7, torturing Tim Drake. I'll begin with how I peeled back the layers of the boy's mind. Joker says in the Batman Beyond Return of the Joker animated film created by Tim and Paul Dini. We see the Joker and Harley kidnap Robin. How did this happen? Well, Tim Drake was out one night patrolling the streets by himself, just getting it done, and then all of a sudden he has to save a lady from 2 thugs. No problem, 2 thugs? Easy. Turns out this was all a setup, classic Joker, and it worked. The Joker trapped him and took him to Arkham Asylum where he used shock therapy and serums, anything to break him down. He straight up tortured him for like weeks at a time. He was brainwashed until he eventually gave up all these secrets about Batman. And they end up turning him into a mini Joker, giving him the appropriate name of Joker Jr., little JJ. Number 6, Joker kills the audience. This moment also mirrors what happened in the finale of the Todd Phillips Joker movie, so I gotta bring it up. It's like 2 birds, 1 stone, bam bam. So in Batman The Dark Knight Returns Part 2, Joker is invited on a talk show to get some insight behind his madness, which is always a great idea. Let's bring those people around. Ellen, like, hey, check under your seats, it's a knife. No. So stupid. After being asked by the host why he kills people, Joker explains how he's going to kill everybody in the room. And cue the panic laughs. What did he say? So Joker begins to explain that he thinks he's Batman's psychotic obsession. And then after asking about the lovely mugs that guests get to drink from on the show, the Joker then breaks the mug and then stabs Dr. Bartholomew in the neck, who was aiding Joker for this interview. Yeah, not so cured after all, I guess. And then if that wasn't bad enough, he then murdered the entire audience with a poisonous gas. So similar in nature, yet I feel like this is worse. I don't know, like everyone else dying and getting poisoned, it's crazy. I also feel like Joaquin Phoenix is more awkward on a talk show than the Joker. I mean, watch any interview with him and you'll be like, no, for sure, definitely. Number 5, Emperor Joker. So this is a form of the Joker that is bigger and badder than ever. And it comes from Superman Emperor Joker back in 2000. And it was a 9-issue crossover event that shows what happens when the Joker steals the powers of Mr. Mxyzptlk, which is spelled so differently. I had to write it in a dictionary where it breaks it down. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Yeah, he was supposed to get only 1% of his reality warping power, but he ended up tricking him into giving the Joker 99.9% power. Oops! So what happens when an imp from a 5th dimension accidentally makes Gotham's worst a god? Well, he eats China. That's a body count that's over 1 billion right there. I mean, the Joker transformed reality into this horrible version that better suited himself, where everybody's stuck in an awful loop. He kills Lex Luthor over and over again, and of course he makes Batman suffer death daily. Number 4, Harley Quinn. Making her first appearance in Batman Adventures issue 12, Harleen Quinzel, Adele Dazeem. Most commonly seen as the Joker's love life and twisted partner in crime, started off as an intern psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum. And then in the 1994 graphic novel, The Batman Adventures Mad Love, I don't know why I did that, Mad Love, we see Harleen's origin play out. So Dr. Harleen Frances Quinzel started to fall in love with the Madman as the days went by, because of course. It's an amazing graphic novel. It actually won the Eisner and Harvey Awards for Best Single Issue Comic of the Year. So if you haven't read it, check it out, it's great. She becomes intrigued with how the Joker's mind works, so she volunteers to help treat him. Now, after helping him escape numerous times, it's no surprise she became his sidekick, donning a gesture suit of her own. And I like where they're going with Birds of Prey, giving her more of the spotlight rather than just this crazy sidekick to the Joker. And also, if I see any more of Jared Leto's Joker, I'm gonna bleach my eyes. That damaged tattoo on his forehead almost got the next spot on this list, I swear. Number 3, Barbara Gordon. This next one hurts me to talk about. Here we go. So The Killing Joke was brought to us by Alan Moore back in 1988, and since its debut, it's referred to as one of the best graphic novels ever published. Fair. So we have this background story for the Joker unfold as he torments the Gordon family, and then it comes down to a few knocks on the door that changes Barbara's life forever. So she thinks that it's Colleen arriving early, and then she goes over slowly, and then does that thing in horror movies, you know, where they open the door mid-conversation, not aware, and then they turn last second, and then bam! The animated movie didn't get the same raving reviews as the novel, and most reviewers agree that the movie built up all this backstory for Barbara just to be a plot device for Bruce's story. Yeah, she gets sacrificed in order for Batman to grow. Like, nobody was ever doubting the Joker would do something like this. I mean, guy eats China. So fans almost write the first 30 minutes off of what's otherwise a pretty solid time, with the likes of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill voicing this adaptation. Number 2, Beat Jason Todd. A Death in the Family, not to be confused with A Death of the Family, is a 4-part storyline written by Jim Starlin and published in 1988. Now, this was a huge moment in the Bat story because we see the Joker beat the second coming of Robin, Jason Todd, to death. This actually came to life thanks to the producers allowing the readers to decide what happens next to the Boy Wonder. And they chose death. He beat him with a crowbar and then a bomb ended it all. Like the Joker used Jason's mother, he blackmailed her and then used her to get to Jason and then killed her off too. So dark. What's even crazier about this whole thing is that it was up to the fans to decide his fate. There was a 36-hour period from September 16th to 17th in 1988, and there was a number you could call in and vote if you wanted the Joker to kill Robin or not. That's like the weirdest reality show ever. Like, dialing one number meant death, dialing the other meant survival. And it got really close too. It was almost like 50-50. God, I wish callers had to talk to somebody instead of just calling a number. That would be amazing. Yeah, hi. You know what? Death. I think, oh wait, no, death, for sure death. Thanks, awesome, sick, cheers. So one caller actually admitted to dialing the number numerous times just to put the nail in the coffin for the Boy Wonder. Yep, it worked. Hope you're happy. Hope you're 90 years old and also happy. And finally, number 1, killed Jim Gordon's wife. Yes, this next one takes place during the holidays, so how fitting and joyous. Making her first appearance in Batman 405, the Year 1 storyline, we find Sarah Essen, Lieutenant Gordon's partner. So after Gordon's divorce, the two of them started to date and eventually they got married. Classic detective stuff. This all sounds lovely so far, but then in Detective Comics 741, we find the Joker after he's kidnapped dozens of babies. I'm talking, this guy kidnapped a bunch of babies and then decided to hide them right in the basement of the Gotham police station, which in my opinion is the worst place to hide anything ever. End of story. So Sarah hears over the radio, Joker has the babies at Central, and she's like, what the f? And then she gets out of there, and then we see him in there talking to one of these babies while he's holding it, saying sweet things, you know, like, how life is the biggest joke of all, sweet things like that. So Sarah makes a loud entrance, tells the Joker to freeze, and Joker tosses the baby at her like hot potato. He tosses an infant, and then Sarah catches the baby, thank God. But then Joker wishes her a Merry Christmas and delivers, bow, a fatal bullet. But the baby's okay, but Sarah, not okay.
Number 10, Bloodstorm. Now, Storm is already mistress of the elements, so quite powerful and quite interesting. But what happens when she becomes a vampire? Now, this has happened briefly in main continuity, but in the Mutant X universe, it became a permanent change. The Mutant X comic series was published from 1998 to 2001, and as mentioned, it saw a very different Storm. This was after she was bitten by Dracula. Here, she was not saved, but instead became a full-fledged creature of the night. She, of course, had vows not to kill, so she had the vampire dilemma, which she solved by hiring some of her former teammates to let her drink from them, like Kitty Pryde. She would eventually leave the X-Men and join a team called the Six. She also turns Gambit into a vampire, even though she warns him he'll regret it, and he does. Spoilers. Listen when people warn you. Bloodstorm became a breakout character of this series. Number 9, New Sun Gambit. Speaking of Gambit, let's take a look at one of his alternate versions. This is New Sun Gambit, and he hails from Earth 9921. Gambit actually has enormous power potential that was quashed by Mr. Sinister in the main continuity, but that continuity is not all. In this other universe, he was trained to use his abilities even before he had them, and then when this was combined with his full potential and a mystic ceremony, he became something else altogether. The only thing is, the awakening of all these abilities would create a shockwave that would destroy his Earth, forcing him to travel around, and of course he ended up on the 616 Earth, where he ended up befriending Gambit and trying to help him along his way, but didn't tell him who he was. It was after his reveal and Gambit's subsequent disgust that he changed his name to New Sun. Some fans like seeing the full unleashed potential on display of Gambit. Number 8, Basilisk. Not all alternate versions that people like have happy outcomes. Case in point, Basilisk from Earth 11326, an Earth also known as Age of X. Here, Cyclops was incarcerated in a mutants-only facility after the manifestation of his powers as a teenager killed several people, including his parents. He captured the attention of the prison warden Arcade because of his power set, so he made him this very special mask. It looks a lot like the Skull mask from Persona 5, and it's something that people like about this character. In fact, for many, it's what makes him cooler. It is a very menacing-looking mask. Now, a lot of this universe had to do with Legion, one of its personalities, and manifesting another world. So for some, it was just a cool concept in general. The mask looked great. Loved the mask. Number 7, Soldier Supreme. Here we have an amalgamated character from Warp World. This was the universe that was created when Gamora had the Infinity Gauntlet, put everybody's souls into the Soul Gem, and then folded that universe in half. As a result of this, the characters were merged and fused together. So you have Marvel characters smushed, and one of those was Captain America, Steve Rogers, and Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. So I mean, they kind of already had the same name, just spelled differently, so it made it a bit easier. Back there, Dr. Stephen Rogers, but now with a PH. Their stories actually don't fuse too badly. It's World War II, and Stephen Rogers is contracted for a super secret soldier experiment, only it turns out it's a cover for a mystical ceremony instead of for, you know, the scientific one that he actually undergoes. But these mystic rituals still end up enhancing his strength and allowing him to connect with the occult, and he becomes Soldier Supreme. So he has Cap's cowl, but he still has like a mustache. And he was actually one of the heroes who objected to Warp World being completely destroyed at the end of the arc by Adam Warlock. So Warlock found a way to let it still exist and let these characters still exist. It was one of those loopholes. Stephen Rogers did that and kept being a hero. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Would any of our nerd lists be complete without mentioning Old Man Logan? Yes they would, but it just keeps coming up. It's a staple here on Top 10 Nerd. Well, this story is one of the most popular alternate universe stories out there, and it has a famously gross confrontation between the Hulk and Wolverine, or Logan, because he's not Wolverine anymore in this story. Here we have a grizzled old man Logan fighting his way across a supervillain-controlled America, trying to keep his claws sheathed after what he did, which, spoilers, was somehow managing to kill most of the X-Men. This was because he fell for an illusion created by Mysterio. This is a must-read for many fans and a fave Wolverine story for others. Number 5, X-Apes. The X-Men are monkeys, or rather apes. This, funnily enough, spawned off of the Marvel Zombies universe end of event. Basically, they're trying anything. That event was just so popular. This did not turn out to be quite the hit that was, but I mean, few things can. But this universe still has its fans. Actually, everybody in this universe are apes or monkeys or animals of some kind. So really, if you enjoy this concept, it's just the whole universe, and you have people like the Ape Avengers and Dr. Octopus. It's made for a certain type of pun-loving individual. It's a bit niche, but for some it sparks joy. Number 4, which breed? For this we have to go for Neil Gaiman of Sandman fame's 1602 Marvel Comics contribution. It is also an alternate universe story. In this universe, the Marvel universe is all happening by Elizabethan times, 1602. There, mutants exist, but they are known as witch breed. This is because they are thought to be the spawn of demons or witches. Or both. They are creatures to be hunted down, but they find safe haven in Xavier's select college for sons of gentlefolk, a school that causes great concern for Sir Nicholas Fury because he sees the potential of all these students as soldiers, which, let's not lie, that's part of what Xavier is doing. Again, this is a universe where people tend to like the whole thing, but the X-Men stand out as a distinct part, or rather, the witch breed. Number 3, X-Babies. Versions of your favorite characters as babies or kids. This is a concept that is either really fun or incredibly lame, depending upon who you're talking to. So the X-Babies are clones created by Mojo in the Mojoverse. This was probably inspired by an even earlier story where he had just taken the X-Men and turned them into kids, again for entertainment. Because you know, if anything goes on long enough, be it show, series, whatever, you're gonna get two things. You're gonna get a child episode and you're gonna get a musical episode. Now the X-Babies are a concept that is short-lived, but they are usually returned to. There is even an A-Babies versus X-Babies. Again, how cool you'll find these tots depends upon your tolerance for baby-related shenanigans. Number 2, Earth X. The version of the X-Men here are depressing, but all of Earth X is depressing actually. After an experiment of Reed Richards goes wrong, or seemingly that's what happened, for once it's not Reed's fault, I know, shock and awe, a population of superpowered beings is produced all over the Earth, and the world drastically alters. To quote The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one is. Suddenly there's not as much of a reason to hate and fear the X-Men, and they've largely fallen apart. The one character people tend to remember the most that sticks out when they first think of this is Wolverine, who's got a beer gut and is married to Jean Grey, except it's not Jean, it's Madeline Pryor, but he keeps calling her Jean, and it's just sad. Now, how exactly is this cooler, you may be asking? Well, it's all in the depiction. It's unique, it's memorable, and part of a well-received work. So for many, that's what makes it cool. And finally, in at number 1, Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. If you thought people loved Vampire Storm, then you know that they enjoy Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine has been a vampire more than once. You have what-if stories like the aforementioned Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. But you also have arcs like Curse of the Mutants, which would also be the arc that left Jubilee as a vampire for a bit. Many have fond memories of the what-if story, where upon successfully turning Storm, Dracula then turns all the rest of the X-Men. Only because of Wolverine's healing factor, he figures out how to use his powers way faster than everybody else, and so he dethrones Dracula and takes over as leader of the vampires. In fact, he leads the new vampire X-Men to take over New York. It's up to the bizarre combination of Doctor Strange and the Punisher to take him down.
Number 10, Songs of the Orphan Child. This is a more weird, twisty moment that is part of a longer, more confusing story, and this moment makes it pretty weird and also adds to the confusion. This moment comes to us from X-Men X-23's solo series, one of anyways. In her 2010 series, we see her take on Miss Sinister, who is really Claudine Ranko, a woman who was implanted with a genetic virus that basically transformed her into Mr. Sinister following his death. However, Mr. Sinister sought to use Miss Sinister's body to return fully, even shapeshifting or exploding into his true form, as Miss Sinister sought to gain more control over this new form herself, in essence becoming an independent, though still villainous entity. This allowed us to get a moment at the end of issue 5 where we see Mr. Sinister bloodily break through Miss Sinister, popping out from beneath her form, like a hideous magic trick. Blah. Mr. Sinister had returned. However, in the next comic, he instantly disappears, turning back into Miss Sinister once more. So this whole shocking cliffhanger is instantly erased in terms of its importance for his full return. Gotta sell those comics, I guess. guess.
Number 9, the Pizza Hut Collector's Edition. There's a few locations that would be perfect for a fight. I mean, New York City gets a lot of attention in superhero movies. Usually the climax would take place in a well-known area so people can watch and be like, wow, I was right there to think I was that close to Dr. Octopus. That's so crazy. It's nice having some sort of real-life relations to a comic book story because they're pretty far-fetched, so the second you throw in some common name or common place, you can't help but attach yourself to the storyline more so. But what if the climax happened and then all of a sudden, Pizza Hut. Yeah, you heard me. So back in 1993, before I even existed, there was an X-Men issue, rather there were 4 issues that were part of this X-Men Collector's Edition comics, with the 4th issue saying right on the cover, Explosive Finale, brought to you by Pizza Hut. Yeah, so they sold these comics back then in Pizza Huts, about Cyclops and Bishop when the climax is them going into a computer, and it's pretty wacky. They're like, whoa, all the cyberspace is warping around us. The visuals are all retro, green and yellow. Then this giant face appears, and it's none other than Arcade. He compromised Cerebro's core, or did he? So the fact that this is like a Pizza Hut comic series is hilarious because it's a good story, but then Pizza Hut's like, hey, don't forget about us. Like you could straight up go in, order a pizza, grab a comic book, and then pay at the counter. That would be the best day ever, hands down. The end of the series was a little odd, however. See, it was all Professor X and he was testing the X-Men. And he finishes the 4th and final issue with a little monologue about how he can always rely on a few good mutants to get the job done. And then Jubilee's like, yeah, for sure. Anyways, anyone wants some pizza? And then, yeah, it's an advertisement. It's just like, hey, check this out. Psych, medium pepperoni, debit.
Number 8, Star Trek / X-Men. As weird as this one sounds, it actually made more sense than some other straight up X-Men stories. This crossover comic titled just Star Trek / X-Men saw our favorite mutants teaming up with the original series crew of the Starship Enterprise. The worlds collided due to a rift in space, through which Proteus was able to move through and take hold of the long dead crewmate Gary Mitchell. In this issue, we get to see some pretty great shared moments between the two teams. Both Bones and Beast respond when Dr. McCoy is called upon, and Wolverine gets knocked out by Spock's Vulcan nerve pinch. Marvel character Gladiator is also featured in the issue and even punches Captain Kirk's ship full on, much to his surprise.
And number 7. Young Dragons in Love. Love is a beautiful thing. It comes in all shapes and sizes, even that of, well, a dragon. We go now to X-Men issue 181 titled Young Dragons in Love. This 1984 comic opens with quite possibly the 2 best images ever. The first opening shot is a group of bystanders looking up, being like, look up in the sky. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it a... And then one guy's like, it's a dragon. And then in the next picture, the dragon is so stupidly large. Like it's way above them. They're right directly underneath it. You would see this dragon from miles away. Like they're all just staring, trying to figure it out. Hey, if you thought that was a plane, you might need some glasses. I don't know, just an idea. This issue is quite fun. It shows the group of people flipping through the book, trying to figure out if it's the Hulk or whoever. Then they're like, man, everybody at school will be so jealous we discovered a new monster. Sure. So out of this dragon falls the X-Men, and they start losing their shit. They're like asking for autographs, they're talking about Storm's hair change, thinking if it's like good or not. They probably worked for TMZ now that I think about it. The comic is just them trying to fight this dragon and also a smaller dragon that makes noises that like contribute to the conversation. Like someone will say something and then the little dragon will be like, sigh, after a line, but it's all smoky and dragon-like. It's amazing. And when it comes to Marvel and Dragons, after Ragnarok, I think we can pull this one off on the big screen. I'll paint myself green, I'll send in a self-tape. I'll be the dragon. Done and done. Let's do it.
Number 6, Performance. This story comes to us from Uncanny X-Men Annual issue number 10, where we are first introduced to Longshot, who of course comes from the Mojoverse. During this issue, while Longshot also shows up, so does a bunch of Mojo's goo. Yep. Mojo's goo. And the panels we get involving this evil plot and the goo are, well, there's something. Mojo's plan is to capture the X-Men and bring them to Mojo World to have them perform live. So he sends Longshot and the aforementioned goo, which depowers the mutants and also turns them into children. In the end, it's up to the new mutants to save the transformed core X-Men of the day, which also happen to include Magneto.
Number 5, Mojo's Media Madness. Remember that low-budget indie film that came out in like 1939? It was called The Wizard of Oz, I think it was. Oz had this younger singer, Judy Garfield, something like that. I don't know, not really well known. Only a handful of people have seen it, I guess. I don't know. This next X-Men issue takes the question we never knew we needed an answer to. That question being, what if the X-Men were in The Wizard of Oz? Yeah, so that villain Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of television entertainment for the universe. So in 1992, the issue titled Mojo's Media Madness had this epically weird storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine to think that they are characters from The Wizard of Oz. So Wolverine is talking like a cowardly lion, and it's actually quite hilarious. I feel like this type of story is what WandaVision is going to end up feeling like on Disney+. Just a lot of weird references and lines, opposite of how the character normally is. So if you want to see for yourself, make sure you check out X-Men issue 10 from 1997.
Number 4. Something Slimy This Way Comes. This is a bizarre story where Professor X decided to throw a surprise birthday party for Kitty Pryde, and hired the most inappropriate clown, Obnoxio, for the party. In this first panel, we see Obnoxio smoking a cigar and thinking about how he's going to spend the pile of money that the professor promised him. The even weirder part of this story is that while this crazy party is going down with this ridiculous clown, the X-Mansion is infiltrated by a villainous mutant who can turn himself into ice cream, appropriately named Ice Cream, but spelled like an eyeball and the shrieking sound that is referred to as a scream. What's more is no one seems to know that Obnoxio was coming. I guess it's a super secret surprise? And Obnoxio also ends up in a ridiculous fight with the X-Men. Not only that, he actually doesn't do too bad.
Number 3. Joker kills the audience. Batman The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. So this moment mirrors what happened in the finale of the Joker movie, kinda. So Joker is invited on a talk show to get some insight behind his madness. Always a great idea. Let's get more of those guests on there. After being asked by the host why he's killed people, Joker explains how he's going to kill everybody in this room. And cue the panic laughs. Joker begins to explain that he thinks he's Batman's psychotic obsession. But then after asking about the lovely mugs that guests would get on these talk shows, the Joker goes, "Oh nice," breaks the mug and then stabs Dr. Bartholomew in the neck, who was aiding Joker for this interview. So it turns out the Joker was not that cured at all. And if that wasn't bad enough, he then murdered the entire audience with poisonous gas. Just a nice finishing touch. A+. Number 2. Killing Rachel. My favorite portrayal of the Joker is still Heath Ledger's. Now, I love the other versions, but after seeing this movie when I was younger and seeing Heath's performance for the first time, it was just surreal. One of the most shocking moments from that movie was when he made Batman choose between saving Harvey Dent or Rachel. And I, of course, had to include this in our list. This is a great moment. The build up to the scene and the character choices that Heath made to express the insanity of the Joker, so good. The scene, of course, doesn't end on a happy note. As we all remember, Rachel gets blown away to smithereens and Harvey starts to mentally decline after her loss, thus becoming the notorious Two-Face. And finally, number 1, the Joker breaks his own spine. Excuse me? Ever lean back in your chair at work and you kind of give it a bit too much? Ooh, gives you quite a oh my god feeling. It's not pleasant. Well, in the 1986 The Dark Knight Returns, we find Joker and Batman hashing it out. So while Batman is kicking his ass, he explains to him how many people he's let die simply by just not killing the Joker. "I never kept count of them," says the Joker, and Batman responds simply with, "I did." So Joker begins to stab Batman, and Batman twists Joker's neck. He's still alive enough to taunt Batman, still somehow. "Come on, finish me," he begs. Batman doesn't budge. So Joker decides, you know what, he's done enough. So the Joker decides to twist his own neck so hard, making it so that he himself has the final blow, thus now making Batman a killer. Number 10. It's raining glass. Not hallelujah. In Batman Confidential issue 11, released back in 2008, we catch up with the Joker as he's prepared a blimp to soar over Gotham City. A nice blimp, you know how we get our hands on blimps. So when the police trail the large aircraft, it begins to descend towards the city, and then it finally explodes. Now you'd think that's already bad enough, that's quite stressful, but how about shards of glass that were inside said blimp? Just started raining down, just shards of glass raining down on Gotham's finest. I mean, scientifically it would look pretty, like all the light refraction, you'd be like, oh, then it's glass, so, you know, short-lived. The glass shards were covered also in this Joker venom, so they wouldn't only cut you, they would cut you and then you would go insane. This whole charade just to get Batsy's attention, and he didn't even buy it. Why? Because Batman was too busy beside Lorna Shore in the hospital, didn't even acknowledge the whole thing. I mean, you gotta try a little harder than that, Joker, which he definitely does. There's a reason this is number 10. Oof. And before we continue on with this dark list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, it'll be the only happy thing probably in this list. So if you want to do that, kind of balance out the scales of emotion, that would be great. No pressure, but please. Number 9, Joker snaps. In the Dark Knight Returns comic from the mind of Frank Miller, Joker has returned 10 years later after being catatonic, because Batman has also returned to Gotham. Makes sense. He successfully convinces doctors at Arkham Asylum that he's now a sane person, and Joker even makes an appearance on a late night talk show just to butter it up, make it look really good. Fearing the worst, Batman shows up and Joker was still indeed a monster inside. He then released a cloud of Joker venom into the audience and he escaped. So naturally a chase ensues through a fair, it's pretty stressful, and Batman finally catches up to Joker in the Tunnel of Love, of course, of all places. Batman literally breaks Joker's neck a bit. He breaks his neck a bit, not enough to kill him, good old Batsy following his one rule. The thing is though, Joker did want the last laugh, and if anything, to make Batman look like a killer. So he called Batman a coward and then just twisted his own neck until his own spine cracked. Imagine a clown calling you a coward and then breaking his own neck. I wouldn't sleep at night. I wouldn't sleep a wink. That's so scary. Coward. No, okay. You said it, man. Number 8, death of the family. Not to be confused with Death in the Family, which I may or may not talk about later. Beginning with Batman 426, Death of the Family is written by Jim Starlin, where Joker kidnaps the Bat family in order to lure in Batman to his trap. This trap being a creepy dinner where the guest's face have a bag over their head and there's bloody bandaging underneath. It's really a messy scene. They're stuck in their seats as well, and they're covered in gasoline, so if Batman were to stand up or make any sudden moves, a fire would erupt. It's bad news. Now this is not an ideal dinner date, especially when the meals come into play. Once the lids to the dinner tray are lifted, the guests see their own faces down in front of them. This ended up being a sick joke and everybody got out okay, but the trauma that they have to live with, on top of being kidnapped by the Joker, that's scary enough. They thought they were eating their own faces for dinner. Yuck. Number 7, Nightwing's home. In that same storyline, Death of the Family, the Joker gets up to much worse than just a face-off prank. At the start of the comic, Nightwing initially tried to warn Bruce because their identities were on the line. Haley's Circus was also supposed to open up in Gotham around the same time, but clearly things were a little wild and dangerous, so Dick opted to relocate that circus to keep the members safe. They're his friends, practically family, and co-workers. Makes sense. Only the Joker was already more than a few steps ahead of him. The Joker took out one of Dick Grayson's ex-girlfriends and the main clown act. He hit him where it hurts, but he wasn't done yet. The Joker set up a party for Dick. He got all the other performers, who are very much not alive at this point, and used Joker venom so they would double down and attack their enemy, as well as being, corpse-like. It's a double whammy. Number 6, Full Monty. In Brian Azzarello's Joker, we see the Clown Prince go full psycho mode. The Joker returns to a lovely dancing establishment with poles and whiskey and such, and there he runs into his old pal Monty. It's been a while, so naturally drinks are an affair. Joker's out, let's party, right? Let's do it, pop some champagne. So one of the dancers that comes to the stage is that of Harley Quinn. Joker gets a little distracted and then he gets more and more eager to have this specific discussion with Monty. It's getting tense for the two. So the two leave for a bit, and then the next dancer to come to the stage is Monty. And, well, he's not in his birthday suit because, well, the birthday suit means skin. Monty did not come out with any skin. In fact, he didn't even dance. He just came out skinless, reached out in horror, and then fell to his death. The one guy in the back of the club puked. Yeah, only one guy threw up. Isn't that wild? Number 5, Batman Endgame. Great name, not the same at all. Written by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo in 2014, Batman Endgame is a 6-issue miniseries where the Joker releases an airborne virus so that every citizen in Gotham turns into these mini Joker maniacs, just running around, flipping cars, doing evil riot stuff. Maybe tiki torches, I don't know, probably. Sounds fitting. That sounds bad at first, but we are talking about the Joker, so that's just the beginning of this madness. The Joker also used this virus to make the Justice League members go after Batman and try and kill him, turning the team against themselves. Classic stuff right there. So Batman had to use everything he has to fight off his powerful coworkers. What a night. Number 4, torturing Tim Drake. In Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, created by Tim and Paul Dini, we see the Joker and Harley kidnap Robin. They just scoop up Tim Drake one night when he was out patrolling the city by himself. All of a sudden he has to save a lady from 2 thugs, which normally, that's a cakewalk, easy peasy, well trained for this, but it turns out this was all a setup. The Joker trapped him, took him to Arkham Asylum, and used shock therapy, serums, abuse, basically anything to break the boy wonder for 2 weeks straight. 2 weeks! That's a long time to be tortured. Sadly, he was eventually brainwashed until he started to spill secrets of Batman. They end up turning him into a mini Joker, giving him the appropriate nickname, JJ, as Joker Jr. Joker Jr. or Junior Chicken. Which do you like more? Number 3, Barbara Gordon. The Killing Joke was brought to us by Alan Moore back in 1988, and since its debut, it's been referred to as one of the best graphic novels ever published. Not too shabby. A few knocks on the door that would soon change Barbara Gordon's life forever. It is so sudden and violent. She thinks at first that it's Colleen arriving to hang out early, but when she opens the door, she realizes the pale face looking back at her is not indeed Colleen. It's the Joker in a tropical button-down shirt. He shot her and she in turn was paralyzed. Her days as Batgirl were already winding down, but this certainly was a brutal way to finalize her Caped Crusader days. Number 2, Killing Jason Todd. A Death in the Family, here we go. It is a 4-part storyline written by Jim Starlin, published in 1988, and this was a huge moment in the Bat story, perhaps one of the biggest. Well, rather a huge moment for Robin. The second Robin had just met his birth mother for the first time. She was in a rough spot in life. She was actually forced to work with the Joker, so his new plan was just to get her to safety. That was the main goal. She ends up pretty much handing Jason over to the Joker, where he then beat him with a crowbar half to death, and then he left both Jason and his mother to die in an explosion. Now, this wasn't all on the Joker, although it sounds like it when I say that out loud. Fans at the time had a say in this whole situation. There was a 36-hour period in September 1988 where you could call in and vote if the Joker should indeed kill Robin. And it was really close. It came down to like 200 votes, and then somebody apparently later on admitted to voting like a couple hundred times. So that's insane. Imagine if George R.R. Martin did that for Game of Thrones. He's like, hey guys, call in if you want me to do the Red Wedding. I don't know. Number 1, Sarah Essen. This next one takes place during the Christmas holiday season. How joyous and wonderful is that? She made her first appearance in Batman issue 405 in the Year 1 storyline, simply as Gordon's partner. We meet Sarah Essen. Now, after Gordon's divorce, the two of them started to date, and eventually, since things were going so well, they got married. Yes, true love exists. I knew it. I knew it was out there somewhere. Never give up, guys. In Detective Comics issue 741, the Joker draws Sarah to the basement of the Gotham police station where he distracts her using a baby. I'll leave it simply as that. That's all I'll say about the baby stuff. Only to shoot her on the spot, ending her life. All those babies, all that planning. What a dark way to end. What a dark point to end. Hey, there's a sad way to end the video. Like, you guys asked for it. This is some dark shit. Well guys, there you have it. What a depressing video. I know the Joker has done a lot of other horrible things, so let us know down in the comments which other moments we forgot, which ones stuck with you, so we can remind you and then we can remind everybody else and bum them out. Number 10. Joker kills Randall. Okay, in the 2019 Joker movie, written and directed by Todd Phillips, we have Arthur Fleck in his apartment before his big TV gig on the Franklin Murray Show later that night. He's then joined by his former colleagues Randall and Gary. They came in, just to check on the guy. They used to work with him, old friends. Let's do it. They question his face paint right off the bat by asking if he got a new gig or if he was planning on going to the rally. Arthur's like, no, my mom died, so I'm just celebrating. Okay, that's one way of celebrating a death. Randall then asks a few questions pertaining recent crimes. So Arthur, getting a little bit, curious, keeps the conversation going a bit, stalling as he pulls out a knife from behind him. And then, out of nowhere, stabs and kills Randall. Also, Gary was there, so it made us believe that nothing bad was gonna happen. Because, Arthur liked Gary. Who doesn't like Gary? And also, Gary at this point is out of the loop. So his shock of what just happened with the whole situation is kind of doing the talking for us. He's terrified of what he just saw, asking Arthur, why did he just do that? And his answer was, do you watch the Franklin Murray Show? Yeah, I'm gonna be on it tonight. The scene is chilling because he assures Gary so well that he can go free. Even at one point pretending to lunge at him as he walks by, just to be funny. This scene is one of those scenes where you can't help but chuckle in fear. Like your jaw's dropped and you're like, huh, what is happening right now? You were the only one that was ever nice to me, Arthur says, before giving Gary a kiss on the forehead and sending him on his way. How lovely, I think. Number 9, the Lazarus Pit. So to save the world, you must save the life of your greatest enemy. Those are the words from Alfred as he and Batman prepare to toss Joker into the Lazarus Pit in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight issue 145. Using the purest water on Earth, Batman plans on tossing Joker into the Lazarus Pit to question him on the whereabouts of Talia and Ra's al Ghul. Knowing that the waters are capable for turning people sane for a brief amount of time, they plan to get Joker to spill the beans on the location in that moment. What a good plan, let's do it. So, while he's in the water, Alfred pulls out a gun to protect himself, but it's deemed unnecessary as Joker awakens. With his sanity? Yeah, it worked. And after a few confusing minutes of being awake, Joker tells the pair where they may be hiding. What do they do with the Joker? Well, they bring him along, of course. Yeah, now that song is going to be stuck in your head as well. You're welcome. This moment was shocking because we find Joker reflecting on those who he's killed in the past. The dead, the dead. Sanity, such a burden, as Joker says. You can say that again. It's quite the burden. Number 8, dinner is served. In Death of the Family, issued October 2012, we find the Joker wearing a mask of his own face? Yeah, that's right, he used his face as a mask to cover his face. So he used a face mask to cover his face, which was the mask, so, The mask wasn't even good either. It was loose and flappy, and it was made of his rotten flesh. Kind of like old bologna. That was a gross image, sorry about that, last one. So what did he even do in the first place? Well, that's the point. While Batman was restrained to a chair, Joker had threatened to ignite the place up using gasoline. What a sticky situation. Literally, because his face. Okay, that was the last one, I swear. And just then, Alfred enters. Oh, thank God, a familiar face. But he's under the control of flesh-faced Joker. Never mind. The Joker then reveals that in front of all of Batman's allies, who are also at the nightmare dinner table, is their faces. What would you do if you woke up to this? Faint? Me too. Number 7, White Knight. This is a fun one. Imagine if Joker was the good guy and Batman was the bad. Okay, well in Batman White Knight #1, released in December 2017, we get to see this. Written by Sean Murphy, this story finds Joker as the hero. And this Batman is reckless. He's destroying the city just to get close to him. Once Batman gets his hands on Joker, the Joker tricks Batman into drugging him so that he can be sane again, becoming Jack Napier. So the Joker at this point actually outsmarts Batman. Ooh! He uses legal knowledge to convince Jim Gordon to arrest him for all this crazy stuff that he's doing just to get to him. This same Joker was still after Batman, so he used the Mad Hatter's control device to do a lot of his dirty work. Nightwing and Batgirl even joined in on the cause to bring in the Caped Crusader. This is a great version of Joker to see. Reviews for the story have been mainly positive. What did you guys think? Let us know below. Number 6, Martha Wayne. Come again? Alternate universes are fun, Flashpoint specifically. So in this universe, Flash's mom is still alive, right? But other weird paths have happened in this universe to get to that point. So things are a little different in big ways. So in this universe, Bruce Wayne is the one who got shot, not his parents. Oh nice. So Thomas Wayne ends up becoming the Caped Crusader using guns and a splash of more violence, while Martha Wayne takes on the mantle of the Joker. That's right, she immediately goes nuts after the death of her son and starts slashing up her own face, taking on the look of the Joker almost immediately. She knows Thomas Wayne, now Batman, would never kill her, so she uses that against him in the storyline. We actually caught a glimpse of this in the opening credits of Batman vs Superman, released in 2016. Didn't anybody else find it odd that Lauren Cohen and Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Bruce Wayne's parents for such a small amount of screen time? They were pretty big actors and were even bigger at the time. Well, it was revealed that a Flashpoint movie has since then been in the works, so hopefully we get to see Zack Snyder's dream of casting Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Batman, and even better, hopefully we see Lauren Cohen taking on the role of Joker. She would probably get an easy Oscar nomination for it. I'll call it now. Check that date. I'm calling it. Number 5, Lois Lane Lives. Speaking of Batman vs Superman, whenever the two cross paths, it's usually a pretty epic time. So after Lois was poisoned by the Joker in Action 17, released in 1996, 2 years after I was born, so old, Superman is faced with the toughest choice. Joker had made it so in order to cure Lois from the poison, Superman must kill the clown prince of comedy himself. Batman reminds Superman of the tremendous guilt that he felt after he killed the Phantom Zone villain in the Pocket Universe. So we got ourselves a situation. So Superman makes the hard choice but to let Lois Lane die. The Joker laughing all the while. So after her supposed death, she lets out a large gasp of air. The Joker starts laughing. So Superman and Lois now both have to deal with the fact that Superman would rather let the love of his life be killed rather than kill the Joker. See, the Joker's always strapped. He's always got a plan. It's tough times, man. Sometimes you just gotta take the L. Number 4, The Killing Joke. Batman the Killing Joke, released in 2016, also made into a feature-length animated film, is one of my favorite storylines. Let me explain why. So, after the Joker had escaped Arkham Asylum, his first stop was to hit up Commissioner Gordon's house, obviously. Barbara unfortunately had to answer the door. God. So Joker fires a bullet that ended up paralyzing her below the waist. And after taking some pretty messed up photos of Barbara, Joker kidnaps Commissioner Gordon and forces him to go on a ride in this messed up amusement park that he's brought him to. And the ride isn't that much fun because as the ride goes on, Gordon is forced to see these horrible photos of his daughter taken from that night. What an absolute nightmare. I've been on roller coasters, but none have been that scary, I don't think. And number 3, X-Babies? Mojo has popped up a few times on this list now, and for good reason. We've seen super babies before, whether it's in Amazon Prime's The Boys or Baby Grinch. Yeah, that part always hurt my teeth. I can't watch that. I get flashbacks from when I broke my front teeth. No thank you. But we also have X-Babies. That's right, so Mojo went ahead and did the X-Men dirty. So in the X-Men Annual issue 10, Mojo is inspired by Muppet babies and thinks, you know what would be pretty cool? X-Men babies. And it was pretty cool. This issue was released in 1986 and was the issue that introduced Longshot, actually. I like Baby Wolverine. He still rocks the claws and he's a badass, but he's like a cute badass. He has the hair. It's amazing. If I have a kid, I'm gonna dress him up like Wolverine and hopefully he doesn't talk the same. I don't know. They say golly gumbucks in the issue quite a bit, and now I'm gonna start saying golly gumbucks all the time. If you could see any X-Men as a baby in live action, which one would you pick? Comment down below so we can chat about it next video.
Number 2, Professor X gets sent weird honeymoon pictures. This is more of a moment that happened in the story Hell Hath No Fury as opposed to the whole story itself being weird. But the moment is so weird, it just needs to be touched on. At the beginning of the comic, we see Professor X reminiscing on the first of his students and also the first to join his X-Men team, pupil Scott Summers. Cyclops has recently left the team to settle down with his now new wife, Madeline Pryor, who looks exactly like Jean Grey. Scott had considered that she might actually be the reincarnation of Jean, but we later find out that she was actually Jean's clone created by Mr. Sinister. Professor X is reading a letter he's received from Scott detailing the events of his newlywed life and includes a picture of Scott and Maddie in bed together. Not only is that a weird thing to send your teacher slash father figure, but it's also weird in the sense that it makes you wonder who was taking this picture. Scott and Maddie also appear to possibly be both naked while in bed as well, so there's that.
And finally, number 1. Dracula? This time of the year is my favorite. The smell of leaves, decaying, lots of chocolate, and people that look like Dracula. I don't know, sign me up. Halloween always slaps. Now I figured it was only fitting to end this wacky list with Dracula himself making an appearance in the X-Men universe. We go now to X-Men Apocalypse vs. Dracula, which made its debut back in 2006. The series is quite cool, but of course it takes place in 1459, so right off the bat, pun intended, you're drawn into this medieval artwork and you see Vlad the Impaler just murking people like left and right. It's kind of like the Battle of the Bastards episode from Game of Thrones. Just a lot of metal clashing. Any movie with metal clashing, I'm in, sign me up. I love this kind of theme, the dark and spooky, like let's go. With Mahershala Ali signed on to play Blade in the MCU, I don't think we're that far out from seeing Dracula fight some Avengers. Jared Leto and Morbius as well. I think we got some bloodsuckers in the pipeline.
Number 10, Cesar Romero. Cesar Romero played the Joker in the 1960s Batman live-action show. While many don't think of his Joker first when it comes to what we consider to be the darkest version, he definitely couldn't be considered one of the most heroic or lightest versions either. Joker in the 60s show was known, like many of the other characters, for his campiness and additionally for his flamboyance. And yet the amount of joy causing harm to others and the glee he exhibited whilst committing crimes and straight up killing people is disturbing in and of itself, especially considering that Romero's version of the Joker seemed to be one of the most sane. So he was fairly level-headed, but just super happy to be out and committing crimes and harming people. Like some Funny Games level of wincing horror. Ooh. Number 9. Batman the Animated Series. This is where Mark Hamill first got his start when it came to portraying this villain. His work as Joker in Batman TAS would end up being so well received that it would lock him into voicing the character in various series, video games, and animated films for years afterward. This version of the character was a combination of the Silver and Bronze Age Joker and was known for being a somewhat two-sided combination of deadly fun and dangerously serious. He often attacked his nervous or unsuspecting victims with a catalog of prank-inspired weapons, including flowers that sprayed acid. Ouch. Number 8. Jared Leto. Jared Leto's Joker was dark in more ways than one, but one of the darkest things about his depiction of the character was Leto's method approach to getting into character, which saw him sending dead animals to other members of the cast on the set of Suicide Squad, in an attempt to tap into Joker's twisted psyche. Despite the fact that we apparently didn't see nearly as much of Jared Leto's performance as was shot, I always felt that his interpretation of the character reminded me of another, darker version of the Joker, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more right now. Number 7. Johnny Frost's Bob. Chaos. Johnny Frost is the sort of narrator that we follow in the Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo graphic novel entitled Joker. The story was set outside of DC's main continuity and got a potential sequel with the miniseries Batman Damned, which is implied to be connected and potentially set in the same world, and is also by Azzarello and Bermejo. In the 2008 graphic novel Joker, we follow Johnny Frost, a criminal goon who ends up becoming Joker's preferred driver. He learns through experience of just how dangerous the Joker can be, to both those who cross him and even those who Frost would have thought is Joker's allies. This is the story where Joker and Harley skin the owner of a strip club and then attempt to make him dance. The Joker himself kills multiple people throughout the story, and Frost is implied to be turned insane by the experience of simply working for the Joker, which makes sense, I think. Number 6. Gotham by Gaslight. The story of Gotham by Gaslight provides a Victorian-inspired horror version of a Batman story where it is believed that Batman is responsible for a series of crimes that we later learn were connected to London's Jack the Ripper. The Joker is the only name we are given for a criminal who was notorious for marrying wealthy elderly ladies and poisoning them in order to inherit and steal their fortunes. While the Joker didn't have a big role in the story and is really only mentioned in passing, he is a frightening character as he is likely inspired by many other cases of the time where we now know of real-life criminals who preyed on people in such a way, with some of the more well-known murderers of this kind being thought responsible for a murder count well into the double digits. It's true, it's history. Number 5. Endgame. While the Joker that reappeared in Endgame technically belongs to the main continuity and is not really an alternate, Scott Snyder's newly reintroduced Joker also allowed for the character to become somewhat reinvented. This version of the Joker was reborn without his ties to Batman, making him appear to be far more ruthless than he previously had. Joker finally returned in Endgame in 2014 after being absent for over a year, last seen falling into a pit at the end of Death of the Family in 2012. In this story, Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder instead choose to explore the idea of Joker breaking his bond with Batman, detaching from him and thereby turning extremely dangerous and reckless. This new version of the Joker was responsible for chopping off Alfred's hand, blowing up the Batcave, and for a while was believed to be an immortal being who had been around since the founding of Gotham. Number 4. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker, for some reason, gets snubbed on so many of these Joker lists that we do, but we should never forget just how dark his version of the Joker also was. He definitely had some of the campy gleefulness that we saw with Romero's Joker, but was also much more volatile. His mood could change as easily as the wind, launching him into violent tirades, and he had a creepy and unsettling air about him that made viewers of Tim Burton's Batman squirm in their seats. You never knew what Nicholson's Joker was going to do, or how he was going to react, which made him one of the most dangerous because he was just so unpredictable. Number 3. Arkham games. Joker in the Arkham games is set on bringing about the destruction of not just Batman, but all of Gotham City with it. Arkham Asylum is probably my favorite game from the series and sees Joker, voiced again by the famous Mark Hamill here, trapping Batman in Arkham Asylum with all the villains he has helped to capture. It also leads us into the plot of Arkham City, revealing that the Joker has gotten his hands on the powerful drug known as Titan and is planning to use the substance in his notorious plot. You as Batman are forced to fight against all of your foes while also taking on various Joker henchmen in your attempt to save the city, escape the asylum, put a stop to Joker before it's too late. Number 2. Gaslight Joker. This version of the Joker is a playable champion featured in the Infinite Crisis multiplayer online battle arena game, or MOBA for short. He comes from a Victorian era inspired alternate universe similar to the one in which the Joker from Gotham by Gaslight originates. However, this version of the Joker is more gruesome than the other Victorian Joker we discussed earlier. He was nicknamed as the Laughing Butcher and was known as a deadly serial killer who would chop up his victims into little bits, using them as rat food for the vermin who he kept in his basement, his pets. His appearance and eccentric hairstyle give off slight Sweeney Todd vibes, which is pretty dark actually because Sweeney Todd was based off of a real story, but it was two men instead of a man and a lady. Anyways. Number 1. The Dark Knight Returns. One of the darkest iterations of the character comes to us from Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, which tells an alternate tale where an old Batman comes out of retirement, which also prompts Joker, who's been in Arkham Asylum in a catatonic state, to return to his old life of crime. He convinces his doctor he's been cured and breaks free while appearing on a talk show where he's meant to discuss his successful reform. Instead, he kills everyone and starts going on a murderous rampage in an attempt to draw Batman out so he can face his iconic enemy. This is also the story where Joker breaks his own neck simply to frame Batman. Joker might not have any formal superpowers, but his willpower is something else. He is an insanely determined villain. Number 10. Harley Quinn animated series. Sure, this version of the Joker is quite hilarious, as this is a mature comedic animated show, but that doesn't mean that he isn't dark. He is still, after all, the Joker. This version of the Joker actually succeeds in taking over Gotham City at the end of season 1, trapping the Justice League, defeating Batman, torturing Harley's crew, and defeating even the other members of the Legion of Doom. The guy even kills Scarecrow for unmasking Batman in front of him by making his head explode with acid. It's true, it happened. He is violent, successful, and still quite dark. He also makes his entrance in season 1, episode 1 by wearing the captain of a yacht's face, ripping it off like a mask to reveal his own. Ugh. Number 9. Emperor Joker. When you give Joker 99.99% of Mr. Mixie-Piz Yiddle's reality warping powers, you can expect things to get weirdly dark. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that Emperor Joker was born in the comics and that he did all kinds of twisted, dark things. One of the worst things though for me was he set almost everyone in a horrible time loop where they were usually trapped in some way or being tortured, or being trapped and tortured. The worst of combos. Or I guess in Joker's case, the best of combos? Number 8. Joker film. The Joker film may exist in its own bubble, but that bubble was a pretty dark and bleak one. Arthur Fleck is played by Joaquin Phoenix in the film, and the film is based off of the Killing Joke origins for the villain. The idea that one bad day is all it takes to turn someone insane or change someone's life dramatically. In the case of the 2019 Joker film, that one bad day is actually kind of more of a snowball effect. Arthur Fleck is a failed comedian who is mentally ill, and when cut off from his medication, quickly becomes overwhelmed by all the negative aspects of his life and shocking revelations. In the end, he ends up killing his favorite show host on national television, similar to a moment in the Dark Knight Returns animated story, and confirming Arthur Fleck's full transformation into the Joker, becoming a killer, a villain, and inspiring riots in Gotham. Number 7. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger had one of the most ruled by chaos versions of the Joker. This was a grittier, darker interpretation of the character that was so powerful it actually influenced Joker's appearance and senseless love of violence in the comics, radiating outwards. Ledger and Christopher Nolan's interpretation of the character was actually a perfect marriage of the silly chaos that is the Joker, but cut with a grotesque sense of recklessness that made this interpretation so dangerous. It remains a great homage to the classic Joker while also being a deadly modern spin on the character. Number 6. Vampire Joker. The Joker of Earth 43 ends up appearing to die, and in so turns Batman evil, causing him to give into his bloodlust and cementing his transformation into a full-fledged monster and vampire. Batman himself had already been changed into a vampire when he and the Joker came to final blows. Batman though remained immune to most vampire weaknesses as he still maintained a pure heart, having never fed off of a human. Joker killing Batman's companion, werecat Selena Kyle, however, threw Batman into a rage, causing him to give into his vampire instincts. He killed Joker and fed off of him, giving into the darkness within himself, and this meant that in death, Joker had actually won. And although Batman attempted to dispose of Joker's body in such a way that, he'd never return as a vampire, somehow Joker managed to survive and did return as a vampire himself during Convergence. Number 5. Killing Joke. This version and Joker story will always have a place in comic book history as being one of the most controversial. But besides that, it also gives us a very dark alternate version of the Joker, and a much sadder version. It paints the picture of Joker as a man who leaves his job at a chemical plant to pursue a career as a stand-up comedian. Unfortunately, no one really finds him very funny, save for his pregnant wife, who insists that he always manages to make her smile. Aww. Low on cash, he agrees to help some criminals with a robbery, guiding them through the chemical plant that he used to work for. After finding out his wife and baby, however, have perished, he is forced to go through with the plan anyway and ends up falling into a vat of chemicals. While of course not an official origin story for the Joker, it is a very dark origin that helps to explain the Joker's madness, and even somehow makes you feel sympathy for the character that in the same book paralyzes Barbara Gordon and tortures her father, Commissioner Gordon. Number 4. Injustice Joker. While Injustice Joker may not have survived very long, he was one of the most brutal and dark because, like some of Joker's other alternates, he was willing to trade his life just to see his plan come to fruition. And come to fruition, it did. Joker was successful in driving Superman to his breaking point, causing him to kill the Joker and turn into a villain himself. One of the best ways, of course, to turn Superman into a villain is to take out all of the people who keep him the most human, such as his pal Jimmy Olsen and, of course, Lois Lois Lane. In doing this, although the Joker died, he won. Because of this incident, and of course Metropolis being blown up, Superman feels he has no choice but to take hold of the world in order to protect Earth, along the way losing even more of his humanity and becoming himself sort of a paranoid dictator. Number 3. X-People. You probably forgot about this team just because their name is, well, super forgettable, but they are actually from a very memorable alternate universe, the MC2, or also known as Alternate Earth 982. This Earth is the home of the beloved Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl, now known as Spider-Woman. But you know what's not so memorable from that universe? Their version of the X-Men. I mean, I get that X-People is meant to be gender neutral, more inclusive, but is that really the best name they could come up with? There has to be something that isn't X-Men that is better than that. I mean, I know there is because we have dozens of other X teams with the letter X in them that are way more catchy than X-People. Because of the Earth it is set in, X-People is a team of originally younger mutants who are now older and taking on the role of leaders, mentors, and teachers. Actually, here Jubilee is the team leader, with her core team roster including Simeon, Angry Eagle, Torque, and Spanner. Number 2. Factor 3. Factor 3? That sounds like some kind of toothpaste. This is another villainous team composed of mutants but led by an alien known as Mutant Master. You might not remember it because it was only around for a few issues and also first appeared way early on in X-Men issue 28 back in 1967. This team popped up a few times and would often force mutants into doing their bidding, often mind-controlling Banshee to attempt to kidnap or help kidnap Professor X. What a wacky time it was. Fortunately, in issue 39, Factor 3 was defeated for good and hasn't bothered the X-Men since. So we haven't seen them for a really long time. Number 1. Lightning Force. This X-Men team comes to us admittedly from an alternate reality, which might be why you've never heard of it before. But once you learn about them, you'll likely wish they had remained forgotten. Lightning Force is an X-Men team that we come across in the Exiles, who themselves belong to Earth 597. They are basically the alternate Excalibur team from their reality, a reality where the Axis won World War II. Think you know where we're going with this. Their roster is almost as surprising as the whole idea for this team. We have Herr Xavier, who helped to create the team through experimenting on them. Yikes. And leading the team, we have Hauptmann England, aka Captain Britain, with Magon, aka Gloriana, Shadowcat, and Nightcrawler. Also, if you were wondering, yes, Kitty Pryde is still Jewish in this reality, which yeah, makes her character's history here pretty dark.
And at number 10, Karma. Karma is a character who first appeared in Marvel Team-Up issue 100 back in 1980. She came from Vietnam, having fled the country with her family during the war. She was one of the founding members of the New Mutants. Now Karma has powerful psionic abilities that allow her to physically possess others, meaning she can take possession of the minds of humans or animals. This occurs by Karma projecting a psionic energy surge that overwhelms their consciousness and renders her victim unconscious, with Karma's own mind taking the wheel, so to speak. When Karma is in control, she can do some real damage, having the ability to alter her victim's memories, perceptions, reveal information to her, or have them fall asleep. She can even make their body work as if it were an extension of her own. But if she stays too long with a host, she risks her own personality becoming a subordinate to that host personality, becoming more and more like her victim. After an incursion with the Shadow King, Karma also gained the ability to mentally see through others' eyes, and she can protect herself from the psychic assault of others. Moving on to number 9, Joseph. Joseph, who only operates by a first name, is the clone of Magneto, but kind of sucks in comparison to him. This is why he's a bit baffling to some. He is a mutant clone who first appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue 327 from 1995, but he also died in a battle against the real Magneto and had a thing for Rogue really briefly. Now his abilities in theory should be the same as Magneto's if he's the iconic villain's clone, right? Well, that is not the case, hence why he's on this list. Sure, he is capable of generating powerful magnetic fields, but he can also generate electricity and electromagnetic radiation. And the real kicker? Well, he doesn't have the full range of Magneto's powers. He never demonstrated the same extent of those powers or some of the tricks that Magneto has been able to pull off over the years, like producing a wormhole. He lacks the mental barriers Magneto has, and therefore when he manipulates a ton of energy, he often causes damage to himself. Sucks for you, Joseph no last name. Moving on to number 8, Husk. Many people might assume that Husk has shape-shifting abilities, but that is not the case. The character who first appeared in ROM Annual Issue 3 in 1984 has the ability to remove one layer of skin, or husk, if you will, which then reveals a different layer of skin made out of an entirely different composition. So essentially, she sheds one layer of skin, and the layer of epidermis beneath can be something the likes of metal or stone or something entirely different. She's a metamorph who has made her skin into glass, wood, rubber, diamond, granite, brick, and even adamantium in the past. This can increase her weight, strength, or invulnerability in the process depending on the material. So she becomes diamond, she becomes impervious to an extent. Rubber, she gets bouncy. She even once generated heat and flame and has even produced acidic skin. Now aside from being kinda gross, think of like all that dead skin she sheds, it's easy to see why some would mistake Husk for a shapeshifter. Although technically speaking she kind of is, but it's a weird process in which she does it, and very limited. Can just be her skin. And at number 7, Sage. Sage is a character who debuted back in 1980, appearing in the X-Men issue 132. And she has a variety of mental abilities that can often be a tad confusing. Think of Sage like a supercomputer. Her brain has unlimited storage capacity. She can recall anything at any time with perfect clarity, and the speed of her thoughts allows her to analyze her surroundings for data within seconds, almost instantaneously. She's like a back computer. In addition to that, she can calculate probability of events based on said data. Sage can multitask too, completing various actions all at once in her brain. And if that wasn't wild enough, she has perfect control over her body because of her superpowered mind, meaning she can recreate any physical actions that she's seen once, as long as they are within the parameters that her body is capable of. She can even see a person's genetic code and read their DNA, and selectively evolve existing genetic traits, which can tap into latent abilities, although she can't reverse the procedure, which has caused unpredictable side effects in the past. She is a walking, talking bat computer. Up next at 6, Lockheed. Lockheed is a literal dragon. Well, actually he is an alien dragon who was Kitty Pryde's longtime companion and a member of both the X-Men and Excalibur teams. First appearing in the Uncanny X-Men issue 166 from 1983, this little dude does a lot more than just your typical dragon stuff of flying and projecting fire. And he is also the size of a cat, which is kind of super adorable. Lockheed comes from a race of advanced dragon-like extraterrestrials who can travel through space via astral ships that transport their essence, which kinda seems absolutely absurd. Now because of his empath abilities, he is able to understand human speech despite not being able to speak it all that well, and is immune to telepathic probing. So he's not just a cat-sized dragon after all. Although, I mean, would you rather have a real dragon or a tiny dragon that was cat-sized? Personally, I would go for the cat-sized dragon. Much more manageable and, like, adorable too. And at 5, Revanche. Revanche, who debuted in 1993 in X-Men issue 17, is one of a few characters on this list whose powers are not only confusing, but so is their origin story. So Revanche's early appearances were plagued by continuity errors in Marvel's comics, thanks to one of her creators, Fabian Nicieza, failing to read Uncanny X-Men issue 255. In that issue, the character Psylocke is discovered on the shores of an island by the Hand, whereas in issue 22 of the second volume of X-Men, a handful of issues after Revanche's debut, her origin story contradicted the one in Uncanny X-Men, with the character having come to possess Psylocke's body. Confusing, right? Revanche was said to have been an intuitive empath prior to switching bodies with Psylocke, but after switching bodies she gained telepathic abilities and could psionically generate a blade, a Psyblade that she could use to force her way into other telepathic characters' minds. So essentially she is Psylocke but not Psylocke and used to be an empath and is just a big jumble of continuity errors. Yeah, no bueno. Up next, number 4, Zorn. Zorn is a confusing character to begin with. Is he his own dude? Is he Magneto? Does that mean Magneto can do a bunch of other stuff like manipulate gravity and turn his sun head into a black hole? Lots of questions, friends. So, for starters, Zorn is a dude who first showed up in New X-Men Annual 2001 as a Chinese mutant who had a star for a brain. That's why he wears his little helmet. He ended up becoming the subject of an incredibly confusing retcon, in which he was revealed to be Magneto, who had actually died in the Planet X storyline prior. It made little sense. Then it was revealed in Excalibur Volume 3 Issue 1 that Magneto never died at all, which meant Zorn wasn't actually Magneto, and that led to a whole confusing storyline that featured Zorn's brother, who was kinda like his twin, and overall it was just a big mess. Now that could largely be the reason why so many fans find Zorn and his abilities perplexing. But even when Zorn was revealed not to be Magneto after all, his brother shared very similar powers to him, and was technically the second Zorn, and there were a bunch of major differences. Rather than having a sun in his head that his helmet covered, his brother had a black hole there. I mean, similar but very, very different things. The original Zorn also had healing powers, electricity and magnetism generation and manipulation, the ability to teleport via time-space wormholes, gravity manipulation, telepathy, and was self-sustaining. So yeah, that's a whole lot of powers to cram into one dude who may or may not be Magneto, but probably wasn't. baffling. Moving on to number 3, Dazzler. Dazzler is often one of the most ripped on mutant characters in the comics, thanks to her publication origins. Initially, Dazzler, aka Alison Blair, was commissioned by Casablanca Records in 1978 as an animated special multimedia cross-promotion called The Disco Queen. Casablanca would bail on the project thanks to financial concerns, but the Disco Queen would live on, first appearing in the Uncanny X-Men issue 130 in 1980 as Dazzler. Dazzler's abilities, which are yet another source of her history of mockery, include the power to convert sound into light beams of various forms and intensity. She is also a trained singer, actress, and dancer, and of course is a highly accomplished roller skater. No joke on that last one. Arguably, the sound conversion trick of hers is the most confusing. She takes sonic vibrations which reach her body and transduces them into light. She has a large range of frequencies that she can do this with all kinds of sound pressures regardless of complexity, dissonance, or randomness being changed and converted. Meaning a song and the sound of a car skidding could both be converted into light. So, what do these light beams do? This is where it gets even a little bit more baffling. She can temporarily blind people by creating a pulse of light of several thousand watts. She can create a cascade of sparkling lights that messes with people's equilibrium. She can create a strobe effect, which is no good for people who have epilepsy, and she can create rays of light that use patterns to produce trance-like effects in her victims. Dazzler can generate enough ultraviolet light to melt large metal objects. She can even use those light rays to create holograms and has used light energy to generate flight, which I don't quite understand, but that's okay. The more you know. And at number 2, Maggot. Maggot is a character that we've discussed a handful of times on our channel thanks to his absurd abilities. He has a slug-based digestive system. Oh, and he also is psychometric. Now, first appearing in Uncanny X-Men issue 345 from 1997, Maggot is a fellow whose digestive system is quite unique. Where his intestines should be, he has a hollow cavity that's home to a pair of semi-sentient slugs, or maggots, hence the name. He's named those slugs Eenie and Meanie. Eenie and Meanie can burrow themselves out of his torso, and at super fast speeds, they attack a foe or object with a powerful enzyme, which then processes and digests said object, or person. From there, they come back to Maggot, crawl back into his hollow cavity, and then transmit the food energy they collected to him, which then can supercharge him and allow him to do a variety of things like increase his strength, physical size, his sturdiness, stamina, etc. If the slugs don't re-enter his belly, this process does not work. And in the past, he's actually lost one of his slugs too. He doesn't get another one. He's left with one slug, which means I guess half of the abilities of digestive power with one slug. And finally, in at number 1, Darwin. Darwin is a peculiar character. First appearing in 2006, X-Men Deadly Genesis issue 2, he's a mutant who has reactive evolution powers. When he was first born, his mother practically disowned him because of his abilities, and later he was experimented on by scientists until Moira McTaggart recruited him. So what does reactive evolution mean in Darwin's case? Well, his body automatically adapted to his environment or circumstances, which allows him to survive anything, although the extent of that capability has never been fully defined in the comics. Now, in the past, he's gained night vision in the dark, he's grown gills when in water, he became fireproof when his skin was exposed to an open flame. But it's not just basic physical transformations with him. He once converted his entire body into pure energy. He has increased his own intelligence. He morphed into a sponge when he was shot at with a weapon meant to destroy one's nervous system. He has learned different languages by merely looking at them. And when facing off against the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle. That last bit is interesting because Darwin doesn't have a choice over how his body reacts. While he may have chosen to increase his strength when fighting against the likes of the Hulk, his body sensed the best means of survival was to teleport him away from the battle. His body is even proven to process alcohol faster when drinking, preventing him from getting drunk. The tough life for Darwin.
Starting off at number 10, we have Magic, or Ilyana Rasputin, named after a really bad Russian guy. Not really. She first appeared in 1975 in the Giant Size X-Men issue number 1. Now, she originated from Lake Baikal, Russia, which, on a side note, by the way, is one of the oldest, most clearest lakes in the entire world. It's also one of the deepest lakes. It's the 7th largest lake in the world. Okay, a little bit of a side fact there, I kinda like that sort of stuff. Let's get back to Magic. Now Magic, she was taken to the United States of America by a villain known as Arcade. Eventually though, she was rescued and became a glorious member of the X-Men, but her powers consisted of teleportation, where she brings out these little stepping discs which originate from a dimension known as Limbo. Now she's capable of teleporting not just in small regions but across continents, and she can even teleport through space and time. Crazy, I know, which others cannot do. She also has the ability to form her own armor, which when she uses her magic more from the Limbo universe, it just gets stronger. And that's what makes people wonder, is exactly what this universe is and how does she manage to harness this energy? It's really unknown. However, she's a sorceress of the Limbo universe, and that's all we got. As a matter of fact, she ended up absorbing all of the Limbo universe, which pretty much nowadays when she teleports, weird images of ghosts and dragons and other creatures now appear. I have no idea. It's comic books. Number 9, we've got Michael Pointer, or simply known as Omega. He's actually got a few different names as well, I'll get into that. Now originally he was just a simple postman before he found out that he was a mutant. He's capable of not just absorbing people and mutants for their powers, but he can also take on personalities, that's right. His powers have always been extremely strong that his suit had to be made by Reed Richards so he could regulate his powers. There was also a point in his superhero career where he absorbed the power of 50 mutants and Zorn. Zorn merged with Michael Pointer and ended up killing almost all the members of Alpha Flight. The thing with Michael Pointer is that he does not need to touch mutants to take the power, he could just be right near them. It's kinda silly. And he actually managed to almost take all of the powers from every single mutant on Earth. He's kinda like Superman of absorption, an unstoppable machine with his powers having unknown origins. Yep. I could write for comic books. Number 8, we got Phantom X, which is probably the coolest name of all of these guys, I'm gonna be honest. Now, he first appeared in 2002 in the new X-Men series number 128, created out of the Weapon Plus program and acted as a Super Sentinel for a while. The Weapon Plus program made a group of people or mutants with techno-organic organisms being fused with nanotechnology of a Sentinel. I don't really know what that means, but Phantom X was born from his mother, who was one of these Weapon Plus made people, when she was fertilized with nano machines. So his powers, they're interesting because he has a nervous system known as the EVA, which can become external, and when the EVA actually leaves him, he becomes more powerful because he doesn't even feel his injuries. Also, the EVA can shapeshift, it identifies as a woman. Phantom X also even has a backup internal nervous system in case EVA gets damaged. Phantom X also has the ability to go into a state of mind and do his own self-repairs. He's an amazing marksman, and his bullets apparently never miss because they are laced with mutant skin. At one point, he was capable of even skewing reality with illusions. Weird. Number 7, we got Glob Herman. Now the coolest guy, but the lamest name at the same time. First appeared in what was known as the new X-Men Volume 2 138. The Prime of Miss Emma Frost May 2013 issue. Now this guy is made up of essentially living wax. It's known as bioparaffin. And his internal organs are pretty much viewable. You can see it, so you can see his bones. They float inside. It's really cool. Now bioparaffin apparently reacts to heat extremely well, and what we do know that this stuff gives him great strength, and at one point he acted as a major heat shield for the X-Men Academy class when they transported to Sword Base. At one point he joined fellow classmates in the Omega game. Glob ended up attacking civilians and joined in the fight against the X-Men. Now the X-Men succeeded in taking him down by burning off that wax layer. He also is known to flick his wax off in small portions, and besides real awesome strength, we don't really know what else it does. Number 6, Shatterstar. I do like the name of this. First appeared in 1991, a part of the New Mutants series. Now, he still remained very popular. As a matter of fact, he was in the second Deadpool movie. He originated from a planet called Mojo World, which was also a century in the future and in another dimension, and I'll get to that and his powers in a short bit. Basically, he's a genetically engineered individual, and he learned to fight in the arenas on Mojo World. Now, for his powers, he has superhero strength, he can time travel, and also dimension travel. Pretty awesome. He also has extreme senses, keeping him alert, and his weapon, which is a staff, is extremely strong. At one point, he was capable of hitting the Thing into a building, which is like, what? I don't know how you do that. Because he was also engineered, his bones are hollow, so he can go really fast. As a matter of fact, he's expected to be able to dodge machine gun fire at point blank range. He's also extremely intelligent and can learn things like languages very quickly. Number 5, we got Gold Balls. Probably the worst name for a hero, but I mean, mean, let's be perfectly honest, it's self-explanatory. He pretty much takes these gold balls that he can just produce and projects them from any part of his body. On top of that, he can call in an infinite amount of them, and like he can not only shoot them in a straight line, but he can also direct them. Pretty weird kind of ability. I mean, magic balls that can also grow in size. Wouldn't the ladies love that? Yeah. Number 4, we got Blink. Now, a member of Generation X, also in the film Days of Future Past, which is my favorite X-Men film, if you guys really want to know that. Now, she's extremely unstable. Sounds like a lot of mutants these days, but oh well. Now, she has the ability to not just teleport herself, but other people around her, which sometimes seems all too convenient. Now, this ability makes her being able to also teleport objects and other things that she can use against her enemies. As for how she does this, we don't really know. Number 3, Forge, a man of great technology, and not just good at inventing things, but he can also perceive mechanical energy in action, which basically means he can look at something and go, ah, that's how you use it. Pretty much he's a guy that just went to Harvard University for engineering and walked out and said, yep, I'm smart. Actually, to be perfectly honest, it's not realistically through intelligence, more or less like technological instinct. Sometimes he'll make something or figure something out and he doesn't really know why, and then he has to go back and he's like, oh, that's how I did it. On top of that, he's also a user of magic. He uses Native American magic, but simple, he's just like an Iron Man. Just different. Number 2, you got Dazzler. Now she is one of the weirdest. I mean, I don't understand any of her powers. I don't know if she's still being made, but either way. Apparently, she can transduce sonic vibrations. She uses a range of frequencies, she uses the audible spectrum, and uses sound pressure levels. What does that mean? Well, apparently, she uses sound and music because music is very pleasing to her. Yeah, that's right. She uses this energy to create light waves that can either put like a trance effect on her enemies. She can also blind her enemies. She is incapable of being blinded, and she also can create holograms and convert this energy to fly. How she does this, nobody really knows. Basically, it's a lot of BS, but it was probably designed by a music student. Number 1, we've got Rogue. I know a lot of you guys are gonna go, come on, really? But realistically, for me, I don't really understand Rogue. I mean, you guys already know a lot about Rogue, so I'm not going to get into the details of her, but we really don't understand her, powers to a degree. And one of the biggest problems is that she's had a different amount of abilities through time, and that's what gets really conflicting. Now, we all know her that she has the ability to absorb other people's powers and other mutants' powers, so basically that means no kissy kissy for her. Thank you. However, in some cases, she can also not just absorb their powers, but their memories, their personalities. Apparently, she can duplicate herself into her victims. So I'm like, yeah, I feel like she's just the vampire of mutants, At one point, she got so powerful she could do an instant death touch. After the Messiah complex, she had the ability to control her powers, so yeah, she could get it on and not kill somebody. It's great. She also apparently, absorbed Miss Marvel's powers at one point, and even Wonder Man's powers, which she had a problem doing that in the past. But one thing is, when she absorbs the powers, her victims are sometimes unconscious for a while, and yeah, how she gets her powers, we don't really know.